Thanks for joining us for Elko Live today. This is the day that we set aside to catch up with our area law enforcement. We are so pleased to have our Elko City Police Chief, Tyler Trouten, sitting alongside Elko County Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Lori.
We appreciate the time. So we can jump right in, maybe do some of the current news and then talk about the overreaching issue right now, which would be election security. Chief, there was a shelter in place at Elko High School this week, and we should probably spend a little time talking about what that was.
Yeah, so this was just a precautionary measure. The Narcotics Task Force was serving a warrant in the area. Because the high school is kind of an open campus, students going between buildings, and the time of the service, they wanted to just basically have the kids stay within the buildings until they knew the scene was secure and safe. Not a full lockdown, kind of that partial step towards that. The other schools in the area, obviously the kids are within school. They weren't out on recess and so forth, but just done out of an abundance of caution that should something go amiss, we don't want to have anybody injured or killed or anything like that. So.
Yep, that was all routine. Again, from what I understand, there was a drug arrest at 7th and Cedar Street area. Warrant was served and no incident other than that. So.
Yep, it all went smoothly, which is what we like. But again, always prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, and our law enforcement works closely together. We did speak with our school superintendent on this program earlier this month about how school threats are handled, Sheriff, and we know that in the event of any kind of a threat, it's taken very seriously and investigated, isn't it?
Yeah, all threats are very serious nowadays. You know, you look at some of these, what do they call them, Chief?
Like
guys
the
just
swatting?
Swatting, right? You look at the swatting calls and, you know, people have to realize you have deputies that are running, you got a safety to the kids, and then you got deputies running to a scene, they're running code, they're running probably a little faster than they should, they're all amped up, but somebody can get in an accident or, you know, you can get somebody hurt but we do look at all incidents and we do investigate them.
Well, and I would add the school resource officers, because there's been several that come in. A lot of times it's perhaps overblown on what was said and so forth, but they err on the side of caution. Let's have contact with the student. Let's see what was really said, why it was said, you know, get to the bottom of it and see. Sometimes these are students who are having problems. They do need help and so forth. But the idea is to stop it before it ever occurs. The Safe Voice tip line, that's one of the benefits of that. And we do appreciate the students, you know, that reach out on that, or even parents and express concerns. But, you know, the intentional swatting calls, as we've seen here a couple of years ago, those are a mess. I still don't understand why somebody finds joy or pleasure in that, but again, usually they're not even a citizen of the country or a resident of this country. They're somewhere else.
Right, and with technology, obviously, it's we're better able to isolate those calls.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we know with the election right around the corner, early voting is underway. I spoke with our clerk, Becky Plunkett, this week. She said she described turnout as amazing. I think clearly a third of registered voters. We have about 35,000 registered voters countywide. At least a third of those had voted, probably more by now. She said the turnout's been pretty steady, Sheriff, and we know that your deputies will be looking out for remote polling places.
Yeah, I voted yesterday too, and it was pretty nice, good little turnout. They said the votes were up, but we are responsible for the security. So what we do is we send out the deputies to get the ballots, the boxes, and all the paperwork involved, and it's all put in a basket and it's all sealed and locked up. And then I just have my guys put on the body cameras while they're transporting them so they can't say that something went bad. So we will be getting all the ballot boxes and bringing them to Elko for the count.
Yep, for that same day election, again, with 3/4 or more of people voting early, that does make for a smoother process on election day for the county clerk's office. They can actually start to handle some of those ballots in advance, and that's good news for getting things done quickly. So, Ty, Chief Trouten, anything that the city police are doing in particular to keep polling safe on election day?
So again, we've been preparing the troops and so forth as well, because the normal issues we see are not the egregious ones. It tends to be people who are unknowingly sometimes electioneering within the polling place. That's the folks wearing clothing or pins or any of those items that endorse one party or one candidate or anything. Those are all prohibited under Nevada revised statute. Basically, the polling place is supposed to be a sterile area. We don't want anybody in there trying to make last-minute pitches or anything like that. Well, that extends to, wearing a shirt or a hat or pins or whatever it may be. Sometimes people get a little angry about that. I just heard a case, not in Nevada, but a female showed up with a shirt proclaiming the name of a candidate. And she went in and voted basically in her bra. Had to take the shirt off and go in. As the law states, if it can reasonably be removed, they can do so, and then they can go in and vote. But you can't bring that stuff in. This is meant to just keep that space safe while you're doing your voting. That's out of respect for everyone who is voting. One of the interesting things, just listening to the radio coming in, and they talked about what the greatest threat to voter fraud is. And that is people who are registered to vote who don't, because you're leaving a vote out there that could be utilized by somebody else. So for those listening, get the word out. Make sure if you're registered, get out there and vote.
And then if you got your mail-in ballot, make sure you take a hold of that, take it with you if you're voting in person, or surrender it. Don't just leave it lying around or put it in the trash can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, there are some national concerns on things. I don't know if the sheriff's up on it, but there is a statewide, basically, sit rep keeping track of any incidents that occur throughout the state, so we see what is happening. Through the past several weeks, I think there's been 2 or 3 instances where plots were revealed where people were intentionally trying to commit terrorism against polling places. They were able to intercept them and stop them. I know there's been some problems, I think, up in Oregon with ballot boxes being burned and, a box left in the street, the guy dropped it or fell out of his truck or something. We don't want those things to happen. As the sheriff articulated, our ballots are very carefully guarded and secured and transported by law enforcement to make sure that they arrive at their destination for the county clerk to count and, record all those things. We'll be doing extra patrols and just, it should be clearly posted all over any polling place about not having that electioneering type stuff around. And I would just encourage people, get out, vote, but don't be wearing any of your, support stuff.
Yeah. Just keep it cool. Be chill, everybody.
Yeah. I got to go to Hawaii that day when we vote. I got to bring one of those ballot boxes back from Hawaii. So.
Well, they look forward to seeing you, Sheriff.
It's going to be a long drive,
Yes, through that windy canyon, and watch out for cattle. And yes.
So, yeah.
Well, I know with the radio station, we've had a long tradition of reporting for the Associated Press that night. So I take my place at the Elko County Courthouse, and I've been able to station there thanks to the clerk, and I get to see the deputies when they come in, and there's a great deal of pride that they take in bringing in those boxes. Sheriff.
Yeah, they take it very serious, and they should, because you look at all the allegations throughout the last few elections, and they protect those, and there's integrity here in Elko. It's not like other states, and my guys are responsible for bringing those votes in, and they take full pride in it.
So, Sheriff, what might people be concerned about? Because also this is unlike any other time in history of the country, the state, or the county, right?
Right. They should just be getting their votes out, and their concern should be make sure that those ballots get to the right place, make sure that they're counted by the individuals or however they're taken care of, and it just has to be done properly. And I believe our clerk they do a very good job of it, and then you'll be there to keep tabs on them.
Yeah, we do that. So, Chief, are you hearing anything?
No, we're not hearing any specific threats or anything, but I know a lot of the concerns, and again, something that I don't think people realize is that there's, no matter what you do, what group of people you pick, there's always going to be a bad apple or two that does something stupid. We haven't had that in Elko County. And again, as the sheriff said, we've got good people here. We've got people who are true citizens, care about the process and making sure that bedrock of our government is safe. But I would just, I guess to again remind people that, look, exercise your right of franchise, but respect the process, and don't be so thin-skinned. At the end of the day, everyone voting, we all want what is best for this country. We may see differently on how that is, but these folks that, to me, it's stupid to say, oh, I'm just not going to vote because I don't trust the process. Well, why? because of this happened in, states on the East Coast or something. There's been, different attempts made through the years. One of the ones they're just joking about is when women got the right to vote, men would dress up as women to go cast another vote. And I'm like, people are people. There's always a group of people that will try to subvert the process or do something shady. I believe our processes are as good as they've ever been on things. I remember the hanging Chad, issues that we had in the past, and yet, people are like, oh, we need to go back to paper ballots. I'm like, I don't know that there's any perfect process out there. Probably the biggest thing that an individual can do to make sure that there's not fraud is, if you're registered, vote.
You're hearing from our sheriff and our city police chief today here on Elko Live on KELK. And so, Sheriff, among the stories that we've heard circulated around the state lately, one of the topics that's been elevated is this idea of militias or outbreaks of violence. And the constitutional county comes up, and I don't know if you're aware of that. Elko County is one of two, I think, in Nevada that are official Constitution counties. And sheriffs are named as a concern within certain political or even, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I was hoping you would talk about our role in being a constitutional county.
Yeah, this first I've heard about it. My role as a sheriff is to make sure that the Constitution is followed. It's been there for a couple of 100 years, and it has to be done. That's what the Supreme Court deals on, is the Constitution. And if it's done wrong, we will take action. We will help out. But I support the FBI and the ATF and BLM. It just has to be done right. And they can't just come in here and start doing their own thing. We should probably have that conversation before they do any of that stuff, right? Like this horse gathering that's coming up. That's all federal, but I've been made aware of it. And every time the FBI comes in, we always talk, and the Second Amendment thing is a big thing, and I don't believe that people will have the right to just come in here and start taking firearms. And that's why we have the Constitution. We have the right to bear those arms, and we will fight those if it's done incorrectly.
So I guess, Sheriff, the big question is, who would inform you or instruct you as a Constitution County Sheriff if, say, they didn't agree with the election results? Where do you get your information from?
I get mine from the clerk's office. They call me, and if there's an issue, if it's a state law, and then Chief Trouten and I would get together and we'll figure out if it's a city or county, probably both the election. Chief Trouten and I would have to figure it out, and we would have to probably notify the federal agency and go from there, and let's see where the chips fly. But I support all those agencies, and it's just something that has to be done correctly.
So you're saying you support the federal agencies, like you were saying, the ATF, and yeah. So will you uphold the results of the election locally and nationally?
Yeah, if whatever happens here in Elko, if it's done correctly, there's no doubt in my mind that it will be done correctly. What happens at the state level or at the presidential level, that's a whole different ball of wax. I don't get involved with the presidential stuff. I do at the local. But, hopefully on both sides, if there's change, they both do it properly and professionally.
What would happen if people's worst fears were realized if there were some sort of violence or an outbreak of violence or people storming a voting or polling place or even the courthouse, Sheriff? And Chief, you're welcome to weigh in on this.
That's going to be a phone call for the chief and I, and we will deal with it. We will get all our deputies and police officers, highway patrol, and we would help those individuals in there. People have the right to protest, but they don't have the right to go in and break stuff and tear stuff up. At that point, it becomes criminal. You want to protest, go ahead and stand outside and protest. Yell and scream all you want, but you don't have the right to go into polling places and burn or tear stuff. That's where we're going to get involved, and that's probably where you're going to get yourself in trouble.
So I'd just say, first, people need to understand that all law enforcement is constitutional. Our oath is to protect and defend the Constitution. The only difference between the military oath is that we protect against domestic and foreign rather than foreign and domestic, the order of those two terms. I find it ironic, I guess, that there's people threatening this under the name of the Constitution when this is not the process outlined by the Constitution. The sheriff's right. You have a right to protest and express your concerns, your freedom of speech, and all these things. But some of these same folks were the ones screaming about, the protests in the city and the violence and the damage and the things that were done. That doesn't give you a buy to turn around and do the same thing. We have a set process of how this goes. You follow the process. I've heard a lot of people doing this. I think a lot of it is perhaps frustration pent up, and people like to voice things and as we call it, chip their teeth, just to be heard. I think sometimes, but understand. You may not like the results of the election for whatever position. If you go out and try to do something against the law, you're going to meet law enforcement real quick, and you will be held accountable.
Chief Tyler Trouten with the Elko City Police Department talking with Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza. So for people in the community or out in the rural part of Nevada, do we still have that see something, say something rule? I mean, do you want to hear from people if they're concerned, Sheriff?
Oh yeah, we listen to anybody. That's Chief Trouten. My job is to listen to the people of Elko and the people from the Elko County. If they have a concern of, let's say, voter fraud or whatever, that's something Ty and I have to deal with, and we'll deal with the clerk's office and bring it up to their attention, and we'll see if there was anything that's committed or if it's just talk. If it's something foul, which I doubt, we'll look into it, but most of the time it's just talk.
You've had to investigate some of that talk, right, Sheriff?
Yeah, we look into it. People talk, and it happens. If it's not true, it's just hearsay, and we look into it, and it happens,
I know that, and I won't say much about it, but there is a local official who has had some threats directed at him on social media, and I think your office is aware of it, right? You're looking at some of those from a possible suspect in Crescent Valley. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Okay. I will make sure
if
that
it's in Crescent Valley?
That would be a different sheriff,
That'd
right?
be your
Different
sheriff.
jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah, Sheriff Watts.
Yes. And he is retiring today. But no, he wasn't making any threats or anything like that.
Okay.
But, and you and I can talk offline if that's helpful.
That's fine.
Okay. Just because this local official shared it with me, so I had assumed that he had reported it to you. But we'll make sure that.
No, I haven't heard anything
Okay.
that's come from Eureka County to our office on any threats or.
Okay. And it's a local county official who received threats, online type threats.
No, I've been made aware of it.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we don't want to spread any rumors,
No,
Aitor. That's
get it.
definitely not our job. So, but it is that time of, it's the season and emotions are heightened. So, it's a good thing that the chief is actually smiling because it's reassuring because a lot of us it's kind of fearful right now, right? There's a lot going around.
Again, what I would encourage all folks to do is just take a deep breath on this. We absolutely want people, if they see something amiss or concerning or potentially dangerous, to report that, no matter what the issue is, whether it's about the election or something occurring at a polling place or human trafficking or child abuse or whatever. That rule will never change. We want to know. We need to look into it. We need to determine if it is something or if it's safe. But with folks, don't get wound up on this. Frankly, the reason I'm smiling is I can't wait for it to be over because I'm tired of polls and commercials and advertising and stuff. And I'm like,
And the poor postal delivery workers.
The amount of junk mail. And I would like to send a message to all politicians. When I see stuff like that, I ignore it.
It goes right into recycling.
It does.
Yeah.
I get it all the time.
Yep.
I take 2-3 days off. I come back, there'll be 200-300 emails, and it's a lot of. And it's like, my gosh, just delete.
So perhaps I'm just too cynical, but I don't trust anything that any politician says about themselves. I look at what I can research and find as to what their voting record has been if they've been in office before. I look at what's out there that you can substantiate that they have or have not done. That's how I make up my decisions. I would hope that everybody who votes researches the candidates on that. Get to know who these people are. I don't care what party you are. Just voting for somebody because they belong to a party is reckless. And I'll put it this way. We've just come through a period over the last 5-6 years where, cops are all bad because of one cop in Minneapolis. That is so distasteful to us. That is so unfair. To me, it's the same error that racism is. You're judging everybody by one or a handful or whatever. Learn about the individual. That is what is key on this. There are some good people out there, and there's also some not so good people. People need to research it and know of themselves who they're voting for. And sometimes this means you need to challenge your already held beliefs. One of the greatest errors, and we know all humans do it, is selective perception. You have a belief, and everything that coincides with that belief, you want to latch onto.
It's also called an algorithm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And so people they tune out anything that's contrary. You need to be open-minded to look at it. We always talk about in law enforcement, we come upon a call, dead body. It's a homicide until we can prove it's not a homicide. We just went in there and said, oh, well, that looks like natural death. It may be anything but, and we would miss that. Or maybe that looks like a suicide. It's a homicide till we know that it is not. People need to be open-minded. Don't just go in there and say, well, I believe this way, and this sounds right to me. Research it. And it's never been easier. Folks, there's computers everywhere.
Right. And there are definitely reliable sources. With our police chief, Ty Trouten, alongside the sheriff. Chief Trouten is an appointed official. That means Elko City Council, who are elected to their positions, appoint the chief. And he reports to the council. So that's how that works. In the case of the sheriff, you're elected. And you've been through this a couple of times, elections.
Yeah, second time, and I get elected by the people of Elko County, and those are the ones who vote me into office. And it's different than Ty and I have to work a little bit more harder than Ty, but
I would disagree with that, because you got to work a little harder every 4 years. I've got 5 bosses that can fire me on any given day,
true,
and they do not need a recall election to do so.
Yeah, so my deal, I deal with the people of Elko County, and if they believe we're doing a good job at the sheriff's office, just not me, I'm just one guy. I still have 100 people there. We're doing a good job. We make it happen.
And your budget, your purse strings, Sheriff, are held by the county commission, and your budget is held by the city, but yet you craft your own budget, you and the department heads, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so
you too, Sheriff.
It's we work within the department, propose the budget and stuff, and then it goes into a meeting with all the other directors and department heads and so forth, because at the end of the day, there's only so many dollars in the kitty, so to speak, to use for all the functions within the city. So yeah, I don't get to set my own budget per se. I can ask for things and beg and plead and all those, but yeah, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, he's Chief. That's correct. Chief Trout and I we would like to get more things, but it always comes down to money. And like I said, we sit down among staff and figure out what we need. We need to prioritize, and we go into once we set our budget, then we have a budget meeting, and then they start cutting stuff, or they add here, or they cut this, and we get this. And so it's a catch-22. So sometimes you get a little bit more, sometimes you get a little less, but it's a business. You have the sheriff's department, you got the district attorney's office, you got the judge, you got county public work, you got Elko Fire. So there's, like the chief said, there's only so much money to go around through different businesses.
And you're still looking at a jail expansion, right, Sheriff?
That's correct.
How's that going?
We've paid for the mapping to get the plans, and we're still working on it. We're still waiting on that, and hopefully if it breaks, if it happens soon, we're hoping to break ground in the spring.
Any idea how much what the plans call for?
I think last time we talked, it was probably $7 million. And so, we're getting overpopulated, and what's killing us right now is the mental health. Back to the mental health again, and it'd be nice to have mental health in one facility with the medical staff all right there, where they could be looked at by them periodically every day, instead of them walking all over the facility or bringing staff or bringing inmates to them, and we'll have it all in one spot. We'll have all the medical there.
And how's that going over with, because we are a conservative county, and commissioners obviously concerned, but this would be a behavioral health unit, right? This expansion of the jail?
Correct.
And so far, so good?
So far, so good. I haven't heard nothing negative, and I believe the county manager and they're all on board, and it all comes down to funding. And So last time I talked to the county manager, we were looking at probably about $7 million to build. But, that price always goes up. You can say 6 million, 7 million, and then by the time you get done, it's
Turns into 12, yeah.
to 8, 9 million, but we're hoping to keep it tight.
Okay. So that should be on a future agenda here pretty soon, right?
It should, probably in the spring, once it gets going.
Okay, Sheriff.
Once we get the plans all done.
All right. And then I want to make sure that with the time we have, I don't want anyone to think that we are not going to talk about the sheriff's deputy domestic violence investigation, Sheriff. And I want to point out that the media locally would probably not have known about this investigation and the arrest had it not been for a press release from the sheriff's office. And that's important to note because, and this is protocol, this is routine procedure. The suspected deputy was booked into another facility outside Elko County. So the way that media knows someone's been arrested is we get a booking sheet and we look those over. So I just want to make sure people realize you guys were totally forthcoming about this investigation.
Yes, we were. It was brought to my attention and of the allegation, and we contacted Chief Trouten's staff, and they took over the investigation. They did their domestic violence investigation and was shipped over to the district attorney's office. Obviously, they found probable cause to make an arrest, warrant for arrest. That individual was arrested, was booked in Elko County, and then was transported to the Lander County to a different facility for his 12 hours where he had posted his bail before, he was at a different facility. And I'd just like to take just a second to thank Ty and the district attorney's office. I support their decision. I support the investigation. I support the DA's investigation. It's not easy to investigate one of your own kind. It's kind of reality hits in, but it was brought to my attention, and we turned it over to the police department, and they did the investigation, and they did a good job. I support both.
I just say, and I think there's a presumption out there amongst the public that somehow when you become a cop or law enforcement, you're expected to be perfect, but we're all humans too. And people make mistakes. The background process for both of our agencies, the testing process, is excruciating in many ways. I mean, we really dig into people's backgrounds and stuff. That is still no guarantee that somebody won't do something wrong down the road or anything like that. The sheriff's office did the right thing. They used an outside agency for the criminal investigation. I'm sure they have their internal investigation going as well on that side of things. But it is what it is. And, people always talk about, cops are corrupt, things like that. This is an exact example of why that's not true. We have to arrest our own sometimes. Many of my people knew that deputy, well known in the sheriff's office. There's no getting away. It is what it is.
Chief Trout and I we can make sure that while they're working their shift, they're doing the right thing. What happens is when they're off duty for 2 or 3 days, they just become like anybody else, and if they get in trouble, there's going to be a fallout, and in this case there was, and there's some allegations, and I wish it wouldn't happen, but it did, and now you just got to let the justice system play out and see where the chips fall. It's
important to note that there are mandatory reporters in law enforcement, in the teaching profession, doctors. There are mandatory reporters throughout the system. And some people might be asking, well, why, if this happened allegedly in December of last year, it took so long to come forward? This was difficult, apparently.
That's correct, and like you said, it was brought to one of our staff, and that individual, because she is a primary reporter, it was brought to my attention, and we went on with investigation, let the PD investigate it.
Okay. So that's all we really should say. This is still being investigated, and the person is a suspect, and that is and is obviously the subject of the investigation. We do want to say that if you or anybody that you are concerned about is in an abusive situation, you can reach out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to Committee Against Domestic Violence. We have the Harbor House Shelter. There's a crisis line, 775-738-9454. And I guess, too, unless there's anything for either of you to chime in, it's probably a good idea for everybody to be reminded that we do have mental health and substance abuse support, because people from all walks of life can experience extreme stress, right, Chief?
Absolutely, and just spent a pretty good portion of yesterday talking to 2 different groups on that very issue relative to behavioral health and so forth. One pursuant to what happens when we have a critical incident, be it a natural disaster or intentional act. The other one of a company looking to maybe bring in some different resources, allow some other folks to have greater access to resources, despite maybe not having great insurance and things like that to our area. It is so critical. Just in the time I've really been, probably the last 10 years, working on the mental health side with folks, the numbers go from 1 in 6 now to 1 in 5 of all adults will have some mental health crisis in their life. Some type of issue will come up. I suspect it's probably even higher than that. It's just underreported. The big thing is Elko is doing a pretty good job. We're getting greater resources. We have multiple available within the city and the county. If there's an issue, seek help. I don't know why, if it's an issue with your brain, it's considered different than if it's an issue with your pancreas or your heart or something like that. It just is an ailment, and they shouldn't be ashamed to try and seek help and fix that ailment.
Thanks, Chief. Elko City Police Chief Ty Trouten. And Sheriff, your office also has mental health and substance abuse support?
Yeah, if an individual if some individual is going through a bad time, they've actually come to me and said, hey, I got these issues, and I put them in contact with HR, and they put them in contact with certain individuals, and they can talk out their issues. Law enforcement is just like anybody else. We probably deal more with the negative, and we have deputies or police officers that arrive on scene, and you have a dead child, and after a couple of years, it gets wound up and it gets in your head, and so that you better be talking to somebody, and it has to be done. And Chief Trouten, the only thing we can do is support them and support our staff, and hopefully they get that counseling, because we want them better when they retire.
Thank you, Sheriff. I want to make sure we got to the topics that both of you were hoping that we would today. Anything that you wanted to say in closing, Sheriff?
Well, I'd just like to say our condolences to the Hoffman family. There's going to be our first election without Lee. You know him, we all know him. You see him at the county commission meeting. He's a big voter turnout person, and we're going to be missing him. And to his family, our deepest condolences, and hope they're all doing well.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yes, we do miss Lee, and I'm going to miss him at the county courthouse on Tuesday night. Yeah, we had some great conversations over the years.
Well, indeed, and you usually had a smile on your face when you're having those conversations. So, as the sheriff said, condolences to his family, as well as we know we've had another family impacted by a death way too early. Minor was killed related to some folks here. I won't go into details on it, but it's difficult. It's a rough time of the year as we come up on the holidays. And I guess along those lines, given what day it is too, is just a reminder to folks, we're going to have kids out trick-or-treating and stuff. It is dark early. Slow down. Be careful. Watch for them. We don't need any more deaths in our community.
Yeah, and bundle up your little ones. If you're going to take them out trick-or-treating, hold their hands and stay with them, and only visit the homes of people that you really, truly know, or their neighbors, and that you trust. It's just really the best way. We have so many alternatives anymore, but yeah. Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today here on KELK.